We are back with episode 2 of Chameleon Cinema, and it was your pick this week.
Yep, and I chose Mad Max Fury Road from 2015.
Yes, and we wanted to pose a little warning just because, I don't know, any movie review, any recommendation ever, you should just take with a grain of salt. Like, do your own research, make sure it's for you. You know what I mean? We can't warn everybody in front of every single thing all the time. But this is kind of like a very particular taste in film. So you've been warned. We actually watched or tried to watch what Fury Road is kind of inspired by, the inspiration behind it, the original, and we had to shut it off because it was so freaking weird. It was so weird, and I love Mel Gibson, and it was his first.
I think I'd have to double check, but I think it was his first film, but
or just one of his first. Might have been his first film.
But that again, this was years after I had watched the second and third, because I only knew of the second and third.
Which you remember having a fondness for.
Yes, and my dad had both of those, and he and I just believed that those were the only two films. Mad Max Road Warrior was the first one. Because it opens out, and it you could totally believe that was the first introduction of him, you know?
Yeah. I feel like these are kind of separate. They are separate pieces in a way. But anyways, that first one was like somebody's rough draft. It had no story plot. It was weird. We were just
the first half.
But it made no sense. Remember, there was the dialogue made no sense. So anyways, this is not that. Yes. We looked it up. This is not even, because I was like, is this a prequel? Is this a sequel? Because usually when something says name and then it has a subtitle like Fury Road, it's supposed to be a sequel or a prequel. But yeah, no, the director,
he's Max.
Oh yeah, his name's the same name, because I was like, this guy is not supposed to be Mel Gibson. But I don't know, the jury's out, because it says,
the director says otherwise, but I think it's, I don't know.
You think it's supposed to be him?
I think it's supposed to be a continuation. I mean, I think it's super weird. It'd be like if they made another Harry Potter film named Harry Potter, and the guy was named Harry, and they're like, yeah, but this has nothing to do with it. The scar, ignore that. It's not him.
Yeah, so that was a bit confusing, but we looked it up, and the director said it's not a sequel, it's not a prequel, it's a revisiting, which I will say, for me, so starting out the gate, for me, first initial, this is the second time I've seen it, but my initial interpretation of it, or impression of it, is that it is its own world. This is someone who created a world, and it's nothing you've really ever seen. There are notes, there are hints of sci-fi, post-apocalyptic stuff that you're familiar with, but overall, there's really nothing like it that I've ever seen.
I'd say the only thing close to it, I would say, is it's the opposite of Waterworld. It's still the same kind of vibe, but instead of tons of water, it's sand, barren, fighting over oil and water.
That's a good, yeah.
But
that's a good comparison.
That's the only thing that I've ever seen that's kind of has that same vibe.
And that guy's not Mel Gibson, but he kind of has
Kevin Costner?
I think so. Yeah. Has Mel Gibson vibes. So interesting. Very interesting. That is, I would never put two and two together, but now that you say that makes total sense. So what was your initial, what's your initial thoughts on the film?
I really liked it. I mean, from what I remembered in the theaters, I remember being taken aback by just memorable moments and visuals and all these things. And so that's what stuck with me and why I wanted to watch it again. And so watching it again, just visually, it's, very close to a cinematic masterpiece.
High praise.
Just the practical effects, even the CG, is just so well done, and the acting, the I guess editing choices of speeding things up, that's throughout the film, sometimes I feel like, I don't know, like I would think to myself, I don't know if that needed that or whatever. But again, that's the director's choice. But anyways,
setting a tone, a vibe.
Overall, I feel like it was a very well done package, I think.
Now, I feel like I agree with most of what you said, but I would say, I don't know if I would say a cinematic masterpiece. I mean, that's high, top tier praise. I will say it definitely like washed over me with a feeling of ick. Like as soon as that's where I feel like when I say it creates a world, you are stepping into something and you better know what you're stepping into because I kind of encompassed it in the word fury. It's like war, it's fury, it's toxic, it's all the worst of people. And like kind of his first quote, or one of the first part of like his first initial dialogue or monologue, he says, "A man reduced to a single instinct survive." And I feel like that was awesome because it's a world of people functioning out of just pure survival and almost like the darkest parts of themselves. So that's what I feel. I feel like a wave of darkness when I watch this movie. But in a way that's what they're trying to make you feel. So I feel like it is very beautiful. There are. I mean, it's weird to use the word beautiful when it's like so grungy and gross. But like, I loved the stark choice of coloration over the whole film. Like it was very orange during like the desert scenes, which is like kind of cliche, but it just fits.
Warm.
It fits right. Yeah. And then it switches later and there's just these deep blue hues. So it's almost like the film is chopped in from like orange, blue, and then like a dusty grayish blue at times, which I thought was, like I said, it's like you can definitely see the director had a clear vision, a clear idea of what they wanted, and I can definitely appreciate that. Not my kind of film, not my usual choice, but it was still very intriguing and had its points of interest to watch.
Yeah, I definitely, I get that. Like, it definitely has, like, tons of darkness. Like I said, the darkest parts of society ramped up to the max.
Yeah, I mean, even and then some of them say, like, war. Like, that's, like, literally their chant. Like, what they believe in is just, like, war, violence.
War boys.
Yeah, war boys.
Yeah, I just think of other movies. What's the Denzel one where he memorizes
the Book of
Bible?
Eli?
The Book of Eli. I just think of that, and like it's another post-apocalyptic. Everyone is just the worst, and like, but there's ray of hope, in that movie. Where in this, there's kind of hope, and then it kind of gets turned on its head, and it's just kind of weird. But I think that's where, it doesn't necessarily have like a redeemer or a like someone to fight the darkness. It's kind of like everyone is just fighting, and a couple people are kind of fending off the darkness. I don't know. It's definitely, I can see why there's a heaviness there, because it's like, it's not super like polarizing with the light and dark. It's like kind of just mostly dark, and then there's some like people who are kind of fending it off. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think that's a excellent assessment. I feel like that's how I felt about it. I feel like, again, that's the point. The point is to be so sapped of hope that when you do recognize it in the film, I will say that was one of my favorite moments that I was really surprised about. And this can go into the next little segue about like the acting, but there's so little hope and redemptive quality that when there is like even a sliver of it, it's so intense and it's almost like you're so thirsty for it. And so like for me, I really was like grossed out, creeped out, and like not into Nux, the war boy who's like these like sick young kids that like live half a life. But Nux is played by Nicholas Hoult, who I like him in some other films that he's been in, Warm Bodies and stuff like that. He's a very interesting actor. I like him. And I think he did such an excellent job in this film. He's probably the shining moment for me. Like Charlize Theron, she did great, but like she's always great. She's almost kind of not playing herself, but like you can kind of picture her playing herself. Even what's his name, the main lead, Mad Max. Oh my gosh, you need to think of his name because he's so famous. Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy, he does great as well, but you can kind of see a tinge of like himself in it as well. Whereas this Nicholas Hoult guy, he turns his character on his head, which is the intention of the film. But he's disgusting. He believes in war and blood, and he nothing will keep him from like getting on the road, even his sickness. He wants to die. He wants to be glorified in his death. And then there's like this moment where this girl shows him just the smallest bit of compassion and empathy, and affection, and it shifts his character, and he becomes this hero, this underdog hero, and it moved me so deeply. And that's when I was like, oh crap, he's acting the crap out of this, because I hated him initially, and now he is my favorite character of the film. So really strong acting, which adds to that darkness and that believability, because everybody's doing such a good job at doing what they're supposed to do that you feel it and you believe it. And his character was a peak shining performance for me.
Yeah, I would say, like, just to piggyback off of like the lack of hope, I think there's just this tension that follows you and follows the main characters throughout the movie. Like, literally, it's kind of like one big chase scene. And I mean, I would say, I don't know, a lot of the time you would be looking at the characters, they're having this scene, but in the distance you can see the war parties like on the horizon, and it's just like creating that tension. It's like they could be a ways off, and they still have time, but they're still there. They're still in the shot. And so you're still like, oh man, you guys got to hurry up. Like, they got to move, or, figure out whatever you're figuring out, whatever, punching each other, or you're, trying to get the truck going again or whatever. And it's just like so much tension, continual, that, when you get a glimpse of hope or a soft moment or something like that, it's just like so stark difference from all of the tension that's the whole time. Yeah, it lives up to its name fully. I mean, it's Mad Max, this crazy guy, totally fits. Fury Road, it's just this drive, this road. It's like a diesel. I think that's even how it's been explained, like back in the day, in the prime of its time, in its heyday, it was like a high octane, blah blah blah. Like people like use these words to describe it, because that's what it is. It's like a diesel head, thriller chase. Like, I don't know. So it definitely lives up to all of that. And that's the thing that I thought was also fascinating, is it creates this almost like a religion. Some of the other quotes that I loved were like, what a lovely day. And it's like so dark. And so it reminds me of when it rains, and I'm always like, it's so beautiful outside. Like when I saw him say that, I was like, oh, that's what other people who love the sun must feel like when I say, this is great, because it's so opposite of things that you would imagine to be great. But that's how brainwashed they are. Their whole witness me, that I think is beautiful, and in the sense of like so creative. Like there was so much creativity in this film, so much creativity in every functioning gadget and gear and thing that was used. The world building in not just this film, but also in the other Mad Max films, minus maybe the first one, but is the creativity of humans solving problems in a alternative future, and the director whoever is building the world, I'm assuming is the director, is already solving problems that you didn't know you needed solved, but you see it happen in front of you and you're like, wow, look at what they've done. But then, there's also other problems that still need to be solved, and that's part of the story. But it was just interesting to see these background functioning, machines, or just the way people interact with things, or how you talked about it, like the crow people, like the people on the stilts.
I didn't talk about it. I wrote it in my notes that he, I want to publicly say, totally chastised me for in the last one. And now who's looking off my notes?
They're very helpful.
Oh, yes. The crow people were, we both kind of were like, what? I think we
so brief too.
Yeah, we rewound it because it was so interesting. Again, just seeing how just somebody's ideas of how the world would adapt to this chaos and this insanity and this weird world. And just the crow people, these people in a marsh hunched over with feathers on them and walking on basically stilts to kind of withstand the toxic marshy lands or whatever. And it was so interesting. It's wow, what a random little thing to have thought of and to develop and put in there.
But visually, again, some of those things are just so visually just whoa, that unless you really think about the practicality, but then you see the functionality behind it, the function of those guys, but then also they visually look super cool. And then same with so many of the
dirt bike guys, they had their own vibe, their own functions. The war boys
you can clearly see where everyone kind of fit. Even with the chaos, the war boys looked white, and the bikers had spikes all over them.
And the bikers were out in the desert, kind of in the hilly parts. So yes, they would use bikes. That makes sense. So a lot of it just was impeccable costume designing, and that I can really appreciate from this film. The costume design was insane. It was unreal, disturbing, entirely disturbing, in every way. One guy had a belt with baby doll heads all over. It was weird. It was awful, but that's the point. So, as far as the director and everybody in the film and everybody who worked on it, getting their point and their theme across, strong, super strong. I also liked the quote, "If you can't fix what's broken, you'll go insane." And I feel like that was a quote by Mad Max. He was saying kind of to the point of if you can't save, people, if you can't fix this, as somebody who wants life to be better, as a man who wants to protect, I'm sure he's kind of sort of referencing his children, his family, anybody who's kind of joined it kind of alludes to him having passed people that he maybe tried to help and they're gone. And it's kind of driven him mad, right? So I liked that quote, and I felt like it was very fitting and grounding to our time and our day and age today. People are so, I feel like when I pop in online, put my ear to the ground, just test the water of the world around me, it's dark, it's sad, it's chaotic. People are angry, people are desperate, people are just so almost violently desiring to fix things, and they will resort. I felt like it was very it seemed so crazy, this film, but something in a little whisper in the back of my head is but it's not that crazy. It could actually,
it's surprisingly grounded in our reality.
Yes. In a weird, dark, sad way. Especially in these chaotic times. And I'm sure, there's been chaotic times before, war times and different things where people can probably see the things that humanity resorts to. Think Nazi times, just the wild things you think humans could never be capable of. They can be, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, I think the Dark Ages, or just many eras of our past that definitely stoop.
It's almost always. I mean, you can get into this blissful ignorance for a time, but I mean, just dig a little deeper, find a little corner of the earth, and it's there. That the darkness of humanity is really there, and your desire, your desperation. I mean, think sex trafficking, child labor. Just all of this stuff that you just want to fix and have it not be real, but to be faced with it on the daily, it would drive you insane if you couldn't fix it. If you didn't have the capacity to. So I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, I think they didn't pull any punches. And I think that's the harsh reality of this movie, is that it's real in its reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in this world, it's not like, oh, here's the Toy Story characters in this. Like, in this world, it's like, no, these are the people that live in this horrible existence, and this is what they look like. This is what they're doing. This is how they treat each other, and it's just like, frick. But that's how it is, and I think that's what you have to wrap your head around without going crazy, is that that's what it is. Like, they created this world, and you're like viewing it, and it's very believable. I think it definitely does a good job.
I had one other point before we kind of wrap up into our sorry, did I cut you off? Okay. I wanted to mention the one part that I thought was beautiful but hilarious was Charlize Theron, when she's like, her character is in this moment of sad desperation, and like she goes into this beautiful point, like, I don't know, the direction of the way the wind was blowing the sand across. It was so beautiful, but she drops her little fake, not even her prosthetic arm. And I'm like, listen, lady, you're being dramatic. Put that arm back on. Why do you need to drop your arm? Like, that's just like a part of your clothes. Like, what? It's like taking off your belt before you like cry. Like, why?
Just dropping your pants before you scream.
Anyways, it was very funny. So there is some like subtle, like, this is trying to be very dramatic, and you can kind of laugh sometimes a little bit because it's just so crazy. It's just so wild. It's just so weird. Very violent, very graphic. So be warned. Like I said, be warned. We're not like, hey, go watch this. This is our top 10 recommendation. Cozy cuddle up with this movie. No, it's just a good movie. We're going to kind of try to do a very chameleon array of movies in all categories. Probably less in the horror because that's just not our vibe. Yeah. But we have some cool, cute, fun. Yeah. There's some maybe more thriller rather than horror, but
there's always exceptions to our rules, but for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. So now what is your rating, your special rating scale, two-tone, two-side rating scale?
All right. So out of 5 for rewatchability, I'm going to rate it a 3. Just because I don't think I'm going to be watching it every other year, but it's been, I think, 8 years since I watched it in theaters, and I think that's about right. Like 8 to 10 years, like
that's a 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like a 1. I would probably maybe watch it again in my lifetime, maybe not, But a 3 is just like, yeah, every while when I've like kind of forgotten how it goes.
Okay.
And then as for a film, I'm gonna give it a 5.
What?
So it'll be a total of 8.
Okay, wow. So this is where I'm glad we did separate. I'm glad you separated it because I think you were right in the last podcast saying we have individual perspectives, individual, ways that we grasp and appreciate film. So I will say for me, I would just knock it down rewatchability to a 2. I don't necessarily love sitting in the ick, but as a cinema junkie, like person who likes film and like all the other things we discussed, I think that, I don't know if I'd give it a 5. I feel like that's a little high for me, but I'd probably, for a film going for all of the things, the music, the, aesthetics, the costuming, all of that, I'd probably give it a 4. Yeah. So that gives mine what?
6.
Wait, I give it a 2. Okay. Yep. So you gave it an 8.
Yep.
And I gave it a score of a 6.
Yeah. And I just think of like rewatchability, like just the sandstorm, like visual scene alone that like bumps it for me up from a 2 to a 3. Like, it's just, some of the scenes in it are just, gosh, you just like, you gotta see it again.
Yeah,
It's just
but
so
then like
good.
the lactating big heavy mamas that they're milking for the mother's milk.
We don't know who's watching this. That might be a rewind. I don't
No.
know.
Anyways, yeah, so there's definitely, it's almost like two-toned, or like a two-sided coin. So great, so dark, so beautiful, so not beautiful. Like, it's really fascinating, but fascinating choice. Interesting pick. Why did you pick it?
Honestly, I watched a video that was top 10 car chases in film, and it was in there. I don't know where it's at, but anyways, I was just like, oh man, I need to watch that again. So
Kind of came out of left field because that's not what was even in our like list of like things that we were going to choose from. But yeah, it was good. It was interesting. So that's it. Hopefully we'll come back with another one. If you haven't watched or listened to our first one, I know it's not Independence Day anymore, but still the film was good and definitely something you can watch, and it doesn't have to be around the 4th of July. So go take a listen to that and maybe watch that film if you so desire, and check this one out if that is your cup of tea.
yeah, all right. Thanks for listening.
Bye.